Welcome to the Miniatures Paintbrush. Today we're going to paint up Thorns of the Briar Queen, a Warhammer Underworld's warband. Welcome back, TMP fans, and we are going to paint up the warband, Thorns of the Briar Queen, which is a Nighthaunt faction. Lovely to paint models or warbands, as you can see here. I went with a light blue to white. I went from a light blue. I went to, that's appropriate because it's a ghost. Light blue to white kind of scheme here. And I went for the rocky type of dirty kind of base, just getting down and dirty with it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So yeah, there are a total of 7 of these models. And if you know or play Warhammer Underworlds, you know there's only 7 spawn points. So it takes up every single spawn point, just like the Armies of Death. Like for the Skeletal Army, also takes up those 7 points. And I believe your Flesh Eater Courts also do that. I think that's a thing with the Death faction. They take up all the squares and they're pretty easy to kill. But they're just there to take like objectives and move around the board and block people. I mean, they're really good at that. And I never played the Nighthaunt before, so this is my first ride into it. Maybe it'll inspire me to complete my Nighthaunt army. I have a Nighthaunt army, entire army of Nighthaunt. And maybe that'll inspire me to get going. I mean, I can't really trust the Stormcast Eternals for being forever because they'll just get rid of things. So maybe Nighthaunt will live for at least a little while till I get them painted.
Well, this would be something new for you. Not new, but like playing the Stormcast Eternals, that you have 3 minis for that one, right?
For Warhammer Underworlds, they usually come in packs of 3, and those are my go-to because they're the stoic knights, and that's, you know, I kind of like the groove of them.
But so it's definitely different gameplay strategy than when you're playing one of the Death factions.
Definitely. All right, so enough jibber jabbering. Let's go down to Tabletown and see how I got on with it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have started on this project. This project is an interesting one because I did not use an airbrush for any of it. It was all gently wet blending and peaceful at that too. I said everybody can achieve airbrush quality with a lot of wet blending and glazing. So this is what it's going to be. It's going to be a lot of glazing back and forth. Join me for this ride. So we're starting off with, we have a turquoise, right? And then we have a P3 troll belly for a mid-tone kind of thing going on there. And then we have some Sotek green just to be there, and a whole bunch of glaze medium. And what you're going to do is start painting with, well, basically dirty paint water. What I mean by that is that's the consistency in which you're going to glaze. You're going to glaze and it's going to be like dirty paint water, and because it's not really like you're putting much paint on there, you're just getting a wisp of paint. You see how lightly that is going on. So while I do the process, which takes a lot longer than airbrushing, but some people really like this process, so I'm gonna go for it right here. Let's talk a little bit about the faction, a little bit about the Briar Queen and all the things. So let's start off with here. We have the Thorns of the Briar Queen, right? So that is Z faction that we're painting up, right? So we have the Thorns of the Briar Queen, which are an Underworld warband, whose members are, well, we have chain rasps, which are bound eternally to the will of the Briar Queen. She is a former prisoner of the Night Vault. The Night Vault was a prison that was in Shadespire. And she had been freed by Nagash to kill all who seek to plunder the mirror city of Shadespire. On her command, they flocked and to defend her or look for victims that she can sate her malice. She's very angry, and with good cause. We're definitely going to get into why she does what she does and how it happened. She uses her spectral chains to snare and render the helpless against spiteful geists. Let's talk about the Briar Queen. Who is she? Where does she come from? How'd she get the moniker, right? Okay, so the Briar Queen was once a death mage. These are the mages that were on top of Mortis engines, okay? So like there are many paths becoming a necromancer, like the search for immortality, the desire for power or worship of Nagash himself, among many others. Now, necromancers can be found across the realms, but are often persecuted for their dark arts and knowledge of the corpse geometries, so to speak. Dark magic, dark juju. All right. Old and powerful necromancers are bound to even have themselves bound with powerful Mortis engines or even Necra Arcana swept alongside with howling spirit storms. So we have the Mortis engine. And I did build a Mortis engine, so it's kind of interesting how it all kind of like completes the circle. So the Briar Queen was one of these necromancers, very powerful death mage, a formidable power, and a great enemy of Shadespire. Shadespire is the place where they defied death by taking their spirit of the dead and infusing it into this shade glass. So imagine if people just didn't die. Like, I don't know, if you can talk to Albert Einstein and talk about his theories of relativity, or you want to talk about atomic energy. So imagine he can teach a class at a university. Just bring over a pane of glass that has a soul and you can keep going. Well, you know that Nagash doesn't stand for that stuff. He's very selfish with his souls here. Okay, just really quick, we're going to switch up to some turquoise kind of blending in here. And that's what we're going to do with this ever hanged person right here. A little turquoise. Vallejo game color for that. So, yeah, we have Nagash, who's not a fan of having his souls taken from him. I mean, you could just look at the battles that they have with Sigmar. Like going back and forth. He's stealing souls from Nagash in order to make his soldiers. So yeah, he's no happy. But, you know, speaking of Nagash is inevitable. Like, he is an indomitable will that is going to catch up with you sooner or later. He has no real concept of time because he's immortal. So it doesn't matter. He take all the time in the universe. He knows in the end, everybody's going to end up on his side. So the end, right? So in any case, these cataphranes that lived in the Mirror City, right? They were going to get punished. And one of the people that were fighting for Nagash to punish them was here, the Briar Queen. Now, we don't have her name down here. So apparently she's been, I guess, wiped clean from the annals of history. However, the Briar Queen went up against the mighty Cataphranes, but only unthinkable bloodshed was the Briar Queen defeated. So it was captured and sentenced to an eternity of imprisonment and torment in what's called the Night Vault, some kind of obsidian shade glass. So they take her soul and they put her into one of these kind of shade glasses, right? And they buried her far beneath the city streets. Now, years had passed, and this agonizing existence slowly drove the Briar Queen to madness. Trapped for centuries in a cell of obsidian shade glass, she was once consumed by misery and despair. Yet there was an ember of hatred for those who had condemned her to this fate. And it still lingered. It kept her going. It kept her alive, this hatred. She was the perfect tool for Nagash to unleash on those who dared trespass in the Mirror City. So let me tell you about the Mirror City. The Mirror City is a place that was destroyed eventually by Nagash. He got to Nagash's ire, and he put all the cataphragms into these mirrors and shattered the mirrors. And like, that's it. You know, you're just tortured for the rest of eternity. And that's how Nagash doles out punishments. So when it came time to, you know, destroying the entire city, the second season of Underworlds, the first one, Shadespire, explaining that, and the second season of Underworlds, you see that everything was destroyed in Shadespire, and people started coming there for treasures. I mean, the Stormcast Colonels went there because they thought maybe they can find the solution to their souls ebbing away every time they got reforged. So this was like a really big hotspot after a while. And of course, the great necromancer was like, that's my place. So you drag the Briar Queen, her screaming existence, from the crystal tomb that she was there imprisoned in, and fashioned her into an incolate malice, into a dread form of a banshee, which is great. Banshees exist also in D&D. You can see that as well, and you could definitely use these. I know I do. Use these for miniatures within your D&D campaigns or any kind of role-playing games you want to play here. Banshee's a pretty common trope. This would be the leader of the Banshees because there are a unit of Banshees that you can use. However, so Banshees are very, very powerful because they have that scream. Like they have that scream that's gonna just blind. Well, it's going to make you cry blood and all kinds of really, really crazy stuff, right? So the great necromancer dragged her screaming essence out of the crystal, right? And formed her into that wanted banshee. With her former mastery of necromantic magic still intact, Nagash's final gift to the Briar Queen was an army of malicious spirits, which, to see his will done, and was unleashed to menace the lands inhabited by certain souls that have cheated the great necromancer with the aid of her spectral army. The Thorns of the Briar Queen, she visits each of the mortal realms, and she can go from realm to realm, which is so cool. But she always goes back to where her soul was tormented. She always comes back to the Mirror City. Between missions, the Briar Queen returns to Shadespire, for her need of vengeance there remains unsatisfied. But she's not the only person in this warband. So we have Varklov the Cruel, and all that we know from Varklov the Cruel is that he is a major domo. Infamously sadistic Geist, who was formerly the High Warden of the Night Vault. How ironic is that? Until he himself was imprisoned for a string of vile murders. So this is a cruel individual, Varklov the Cruel, who just started murdering people, though he was the person that kept the Night Vault locked up. So his eternal judgment is to serve the Briar Queen, one of her wardens, and just be right-hand person for them. And then we have the Everhanged, right? So the greatest among the Briar Queen's number is the Everhanged, actually. And it's a spectral echo of a serial murderer, around whose neck still hangs the gallows rope that ended his reign of terror. Nagash has this, he certainly has this theme going on, right? So the Everhang was the greatest of the Briar Queen's champion. He wields a malignant weapon into battle. He has a sword. So he comes in, stabby, stabby, pokey, pokey kind of thing. That's who I'm working on right now, actually. I went into the turquoise right there, and yeah, the turquoise is it was okay. It was enjoyable to paint and blend this cloak, but you can see this could have taken 20 seconds, but it took all this time to wet blend. And that's why I use airbrushes. But it does look kind of like ghostly fire. I like that. So it just takes time. All right, let's move on to the black cloak. I'm using Vallejo color black in order to achieve this. And I like these models because they're easy to paint. I think the faction will be pretty easy to paint to the point where I'm satisfied with. In fact, so much so, this might be my next faction after I finish the Tau. Possibly finish up painting the Stormcast Eternals that I have. You know, I don't know. But this seems to be easier to paint than just about anything. And I do want easy to paint. I'm getting a little lazy here. I want to have a lot of factions. So basically, if I want to play games and have fun, I have lots and lots and lots of options, which is super important for me. So I'm being very careful with black. Here's the thing about painting black on anything. You don't want to mix it up with any of the color. It's the darkest color and the hardest to paint over. So you do want to be careful with this. My goodness, there's a rainstorm going on behind me. I hope you're not hearing any of that. But black is definitely, positively, unequivocally the best color I like working with. Because it's a giant eraser. You make a mistake, paint it black. You know, it's so cool. But you just do have to be careful with this thing. But you know, as far as painting armor and stuff like that, it is kind of easy to paint. It just goes and flows. I'm falling in love with these miniatures now. I'm falling in love with the Nighthaunt. Maybe I'll do an entire series of Nighthaunt. I mean, I've already done the Flesh Eater Courts, and I do have Nighthaunt. And then, of course, I have all the Death factions, so I do have everything. I have a lot of stuff to paint. So who knows? But I think I'm just going to paint this up and have some games of Shadespire. I think that would definitely be a lot of fun. Now, I haven't played Shadespire in a very, very long time, but still, I mean, I want to get back into it. I think painting up this warband is definitely going to take me there. All right, time for Vallejo metal color copper. Very easy way, especially with all the fine pigmentation, to be able to do this and to paint this and to paint all the copper bits. Now, I do want to say that I do use a recyclable bottle top in order to keep my metallic paint, so this way I don't put it onto my wet palette. Plus, I find like metallic paints separate very well in a wet palette, and I don't want it to separate. Next up, some dry brushing. I was told by someone long ago that dry brushing is an inferior technique. And I said there's no such thing as an inferior technique. It's just how well you use it. So we're doing some sky gray, doing some dry brushing here. And I did get the dry brush. I believe this is a makeup brush from Effie. And I did get another dry brush too, just to try it out. I never used dry brushing with a soft kind of makeup brush before. So this is my first time ever doing it. I do have to say it was pretty easy, you know, and if you haven't tried this technique yet, by all means, it's great, especially for the black cloak. I really wanted to give it that, and dry brushing is the key. It's a very simple way to add some contrast to just that black that's just a sea of black. Having that gray there really adds a little bit of something there. That there's differentiation, which is really important to have. Really separate the materials from the ghostly plane to the black cloak that hangs ever so lightly over the visage of the dead hanging one. I'm playing it up, but it's a lot of fun. Okay, back to the Briar Queen. Gotta do some of that. So most of the bronze is already done. And if I could ever get this to focus just right, it'd be good. There it is. So you can see there, it really does look stunning. I do like that. I am going to, do a little bit of highlights and put a little white on the face just to bring up the edges, extreme highlights, and then just going on with a diluted white onto the veil that he's using. So just adding some white detail to the face just to make it a little lighter. And there's little dots here and there. It's very, very small and very specific where I want to put the paint onto. Again, this is somewhat diluted, so it's going to go through. So you do have to be somewhat careful with it, but it is somewhat forgiving at the same time, meaning that you can mess it up, but you could always paint over it. At the same time, it's translucent enough that it'll blend and won't leave any kind of brush marks. So that's where you want it with the consistency with the white paint. Just enough that you don't leave any brush marks. Time for some camouflage olive from Panzer's Aces Vallejo model color. I do like their military stuff. And the olive is a perfect base coat for the Briar Thorns here. I do build it up. Everything is a 3-layered base coat, mid-tone, and highlight as well. You can use a variety of things to highlight this, but this olive base, that's a great base to start with. And you could choose any other 2 greens to really just bring it up a little. I did take a Kelly kind of green to bring that up as well. Time for the roses. Evil Sun Scarlet is your friend. And then a nice orange, rich orange for the highlights for each one of those roses. Does amazing work. Remember, you do want to have more contrast, a little popping going on. If you just painted this one color, it's going to be like, meh, okay, you painted it. But it's not really going to come alive until you have those highlights in, until you have, the shadows done. Time for some Pro Acryl, Vince Ventuella Payne's Gray. And I'm going to go over the brickwork that's on the bases. So just tapping that in and spreading that around for the next feature that we're going to do here. And I do some wet blending here. So I kind of lay this all down rather quickly. And I am going to use a sky gray. Plus I do have some white, FW ink white, that I'm going to add onto it as well. Really just wet blending those colors in. So this way, again, we have that mid-tone as well as the highlights and the base color. It's a very good place to start when it comes to building any kind of interest inside your miniatures. Having those 3 values, having it go up in a gradient, really advances what your basic models are to really be a piece that you can take to the game store and people just ogle over it and like, wow, look at all the detail. Look how many transitions you have. When really, it just takes a couple of seconds to add these things. All right, so I started out with a base coat of bone. So we have some Ashanti bone, right? I put that towards all the bottoms there. And then I washed it out with a Sarapon Sepia. I didn't like that. I came back and I washed it with Earthshade, Agrax Earthshade. Didn't like that either. So then I started painting the individual stones with some some of that Payne's gray going back to it, making sure that I isolate all the skulls and femurs that are on the floor here, that I don't paint any of that Payne's gray on there to isolate that as well. I do hit that stuff again with that Agrax Earthshade for the brown to go into the bones, because I do like brown bones. But there it is. The shade is actually drying and it gets a little darker there. And I use a little Payne's gray for that. All right, time for some Steinel Res Brown. And I would do both the rope as well as the wood. Now, I don't advise you to paint the rope the same color as the wood. However, with the highlights that I put on the rope, it really starts to differentiate the rope from the wood. The wood, of course, is going to get an Agrax Earthshade, so is the rope. But the rope is going to have those 3 layers of highlight to really make that pop. I don't think that the actual gallows wood is the center thing. Morphan Brown right now. Coming up with that rope, again, trying to make it lighter. But yeah, I don't think the gallows wood is the showcase here. I think the actual hanging rope would be the showcase here. So I really wanted to put that and give that a little more attention than the wood. Usually I would do more on the wood, but I didn't really highlight the wood as much as I did the rope here, emphasizing how important it is in the model. Yes, differentiation also occurs when you have different values on what you deem is important. Therefore, when the person is viewing the model, they know exactly, and you're guiding the eyes exactly where you want them to be placed. So not only are you painting, time for some khaki gray, as the highlight here for the rope. So not only are you painting for your enjoyment, you're also manipulating the viewer's eye when people watch it and really telling them where to look and where to look next. If you could start doing that within your model, when you're just saying, okay, so when people look at it, what's the first thing I want them to notice? The face. What's the second thing? Because that humanizes it, whatever it is. It could be like a fantasy animal or whatever. It humanizes it and people can relate to it, right? The second thing is what makes this model special. And you're going to want to really pour on the details to what makes this model unique and special, because those are the qualities that you want to stand out, to really differentiate. So spending a little time on the rope really made it pop and really made me put more emphasis on what I want you to look at when you look at the model. Of course, when I painted this, Sarah was not around, so I'm going to get her honest opinion after this tutorial is done, so she can tell me what she notices on the model. This is not coached in whatsoever. I just give her the model and she just comes up with what she thinks works, what doesn't work, what she likes, what she even dislikes. You know, I ask for honest feedback either way. Okay, some Agrax Earthshade now, going on the wood, going on all the bits, going on the thrice highlighted or thrice colored rope as well, and just liquid talent, right? Like sometimes liquid talent, you know, it just works that way. I hardly ever use shades the way they're intended to. I usually throw it through an airbrush because I love the gradients that it causes. So this is a little bit different for me, but that's okay. That's quite all right. I do have to switch over to those speed paints. I am really looking at Army Painter's speed paints collection to get those and to use those for, you know, all my gradient needs. But I think I'll do that after all my shades are gone, the Citadel shades, which are out of production right now. All right, time for a little last embellishment is going with the fire here, which I inverted. I put the yellow at the bottom, which is supposed to be red at the bottom, and I inverted it because it's a ghost, so it's supposed to be ghostly there. And what I do was I create a little bit of a wash here by diluting the flash gets yellow, wiping it off, and then just doing some OSL, just hitting the candle a little bit and hitting the arm, just getting a little bit of that glow in there. And then look how easy it is to have OSL. You just dilute the paint and go for it. Now, some people put different paints on there, but being that this is a ghostly figure, light's not going to play the same way as it would a solid figure. So usually you choose a different color to just glaze on there as your OSL. But this one works perfectly. Okay, time for the last bit of this, last detail that I'm going to cover in this. And of course, the last detail is some black going around the rings of the bases. Now, this is not all that happens. When I'm done with this painting session, I usually leave this by my nightstand. So when I wake up in the morning, I just stare at it and look at what I missed. What I didn't like was the way the base came out, so I actually did some changes to it, and I added a little more gray the next day. But you can do the bases however you want. I also did some Ushanti bone on the bones to make that pop out as well, and the end product is going to be in the pictures that you're going to shortly see. Now, please forgive me that the background images for both the pictures as well as the talking heads portion of the show is quite bare, and that's simply because I am moving out of this studio and going into another studio. So it's not the best, but I wanted to produce content for you guys and make sure you had something, you know, from the TMP that's going on, because I'm still painting. I just, you know, a little embarrassed that I didn't have all the equipment up and stuff like that, because I do wanted to give you a quality show. Yes, the final back ramp. Anyway, time for the pictures and then for the outro. Later. Well, there you have it. Nighthaunt all painted up. What did you think about them?
I love them. There were definitely some details that I think on first glance people might not notice, but one thing that I really like is in each of these minis, the roses is a motif that is repeated throughout. Every one of them has a rose. And something that I really like about the way that you paint is using the 3 layers. So you can see it well on this one, but on the vine, you said you had olive green, Kelly green, and lime green. And that really just gives such a realistic look to the vines and the roses. It really gives them so much depth. And I think that that's really cool. Something else that you did really well is the metal. These, I guess maybe it's copper. I think these are supposed to be copper helmets and copper weapons. Like, you really captured the shine, and you can even see kind of the indentations of where it's not a perfect it's not kind of a perfect sphere or a perfect oval. You can see every little indent in the helmet. Something that I thought was interesting about the set is that the queen does not have any kind of chains or anything that's holding her. All of the other minis have some sort of either chain, handcuff. They have something that is holding them. And she is the one that doesn't have anything.
She's free.
She's free.
Yeah.
She's the one that's in control. So I definitely think that was an interesting choice on the whoever developed this particular set of miniatures. Something else that I thought you did that was pretty clever was when you did the reflection, where you had the candle light and then you had the glow from the candle actually making the skeleton's hand kind of glow with a bright green color. Yeah, I thought that was definitely something that was very cool. And just, the extreme attention to detail. Like here you can see the 2 different metallic materials together, but they look completely different. Even though you have, the copper chains, and then you also have this metal here, you made them look totally different. So yeah, that was definitely cool. And I like the bases. Like you said, the bases are kind of grimy looking. They look, it's like they're in maybe, it almost looks like an abandoned parking lot. Like there's gravel. It almost looks like they're on some sort of old like cobblestone gravel
where you
like
expect something
an
being
abandoned
haunted.
town. Like
Yeah.
if you took maybe I'm thinking like Gettysburg, Pennsylvania,
Oh, wow.
or even parts of Hagerstown, some sort of historic city, and you just left it there for a couple of 100 years unsupervised, untended by humans. I think that's kind of what the ground would look like, but if maybe there was some poison in the air that kept most of the plants from growing. In the rocks, how you showed the texture in the rocks. So, the rocks are not just a flat gray on the base. You really showed the highlights and the lowlights. So I can see, even on these tiny little rocks, you can see the texture on them. So that was definitely something that I enjoyed. And yeah, this is definitely a faction that I'm interested in playing. I've never heard of them until you started doing this particular project, but I'm definitely excited for us to explore them together.
Now, the thing about Nighthaunt is that these are Nagash's tortured. What I mean by that is that everyone appears as a mockery of that they were in life. So you can tell what they did in life by looking at them. So he was probably a jailer.
Yeah,
right? This
you
guy,
see the keys.
put them up. Yeah, in the center. Yeah, so he's like a jailer. So he's a jailer for the rest of his life. And over here, that he got hung for what kind of crime? You see that? Show the guys and girls out there.
Show the audience.
Yeah, audience.
You can
so
see
you
the
got
news.
hung.
Yeah, and then I'm looking on the rope. I mean, you even gave that rope.
Three shades.
Yeah, different texture. I can see on the rope. I can see the braiding of the rope on the tiny miniature. Every little section of the braiding is very clearly outlined because of how you did the painting. So that was definitely something that was very cool. That I hadn't even noticed until I really started looking at that rope. And same thing with the wood here. What do you think this guy did? I see.
Well, he definitely got nailed to the plank of a ship or something like that. And he was a prisoner, probably in the galley.
He also has the kind of black cloak, but it's not over his face. So yeah, but I like that the brown on the metallic chains looks totally different from the brown on the wood. Yeah, like you really captured the two different types of values there.
The textures, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, glad you liked it. Hopefully you liked it as well. And if you're following around the tutorial and you have any questions, leave them down below. Don't forget that if you like the channel, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notifications for any new videos that come out. And I have some advice for you. What we do. Paint every miniature to increase at least one skill.
And may your backlog get ever smaller.
Step 1, wake up early, gonna rise with the sun. Step 2, get some good, some food in you. Step 3, think real hard about what you wanna be. Step 4, everybody just do your thing. Wake up, today's gonna be a